Well, hello, I'm Robbie, and this is Book Squirrel, and in today's video, I am going to be doing my January wrap-up. Oh yeah. Da-da-da, ba-ba-bum, Book Squirrel. I don't know. Now, I'm going to start making these videos more succinct. In previous months, I've done like channel updates and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that anymore in these videos. Instead, I'm just going to focus on what I read. I'm going to do a little bit of stats. I'm going to rank the books that I read in January from least favorite to most favorite. And then I'm also going to do an update, but it's about the ACORN Bingo. ACORN Bingo, yeah. So yeah, let's start with the stats. In January of 2026, I tackled 9 books, and I say tackled because I finished 7 of those. I did DNF 2 books in January. I did read pages, though, in those books before I DNF'd it. I mean, I do have to give the books at least some kind of try. So overall, I read about 2,200 pages in the month. That included 570 pages from books that I DNF'd. It's a lot of pages for not having finished books. And here's the thing. I would have been able to read more pages, but I did 14 videos on my channel this month because of each book gets an individual review. And then I also had the ACORN Awards and a few other monthly videos that I do. But I still think 2,200 is a good amount. And my average ACORN score for January, rounding to the nearest ACORN, was 20 out of 25. So I would say it was actually a very good month overall. It was really kind of a touch and go month. Some books I really loved, some books obviously I didn't really like at all. And I did not include my DNFs in that average. Star average, same, not including DNFs, rounding to the nearest quarter star. My star average for January was 3.75. I'll take it. Earlier in the month, I was starting to think, I'm rating things really high. This month alone, I already had 2 5 stars. I was at the beginning of the month, too. I was like, everything's going to be 5 stars. And then it wasn't. And I read 4 of my 26 priority reads for 2026. So that was cool. I'm glad to get a good start on my priority reads. And now to the book rankings. If you're new to the channel, I do an individual review for every single one of the books that I read. I got a hair. I even do a review for the books I DNF. So all of these do have links that I'll put in the description. But starting with my least favorite of the month, that is going to go to Legion by William Peter Blatty. Let me scoot over here so I can do some I really only read about 100 pages of this. I found it to be insufferable. It's only like a 300 and some page book, so I could have pushed through, but I just did not like the main character at all. I found his mind to be absolutely insufferable. There's even a quote that I didn't include in my video that I'm kicking myself for not including. So I will include it now. And that quote is, "This is truly insufferable." Literally, that's in the book. And I was like, yeah, I agree. So I DNF'd that. Then in 8th place goes Anathem by Neil Stephenson. There are some good elements in this book, but it's way too long. It's my second Neil Stephenson book, and I really determined from this book that I'm just not the demographic for Neil Stephenson, which is fine. I'm sure that there's a couple books out there that I might actually like from him, but I've just lost faith in reading books by him. And that's a me thing. But I read 470 pages of this book, and I only got halfway through because it is close to 1,000 pages. And the reason why I read 470 pages is because I did like the first part of the book. After you get through like the first 100 pages of describing the place that they live, I thought that the first big chunk of story was actually really interesting, and then it just petered from there. In 7th place is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. I just found this book to be really disappointing. As I've mentioned many times in other videos on this channel, one of my favorite sci-fi and horror movies of all time is The Thing, specifically John Carpenter's The Thing. And it's primarily because it uses puppets, and they still look great today, and there's some really creepy and wacky moments in that movie that I just live for. I was excited excited for the book because it is what inspired that movie. But man, I just found this to be disappointing. I didn't care for any of the characters. The alien is really what makes this story interesting. And the alien was just completely tertiary in that book. You barely saw anything about it. Just watch John Carpenter's The Thing. But it was a short book, so at least I got through that. In 6th place is Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. I liked the trippy half of this book. This book takes place in a world where aliens have briefly touched down, made a mess of things in their contact areas, and then very quickly, without even communicating to the humans, have taken back off into space and just left a mess. I think that's awesome. Again, the aliens are so tertiary, they're barely spoken of. The bulk of this book really consists of two things. One, going into these very deadly contact areas that have been put under government control to try to steal artifacts and sell them on the black market. Those parts of the book I thought were really fascinating, really well done. But the other part of this book, which is unfortunately the slight majority of the book, is really just kind of like a lit fic, which I love. I like lit fics, but I was wanting an adventure, and the plot here is just non-existent. So that's why it's in the 6th place. Coming in at number 5, I have Vigil by George Saunders. This book just came out earlier this month. A whole week hasn't even passed since this book came out. I got it. It was the most expensive book that I have purchased. It is one of the shorter books I have purchased. I did find this book interesting. I like the whimsy of this book. In the book, George Saunders has a discussion about climate change, which I really appreciated. But I just feel like the whole book was a little disjointed. The whimsy didn't really go with the serious and vice versa. And in the end, it just kind of felt a little indifferent to me. And I want a book that talks about serious topics like that to be much more potent. So it got 5th spot. Speaking about potent books that have a commentary on lived experience, coming in at number 4 is 1984 by George Orwell, apparently. George Orwell. I found this book to be very impactful. I found this book to be very disturbing. I found this book to be very relevant to today. I am someone who lives in Minnesota, and it has been very scary having the state itself, not Minnesota, but the federal government, occupy and terrorize the community. Truly, they are here to disturb. And if you don't believe that, come here. Go to Minneapolis, see what they're doing. The 2 murders that happened in Minneapolis by federal agents recently, we have plenty of video to see what happened, and the fact that the state is trying to convince us to not believe what we're seeing with our own eyes. It's very 1984. I'm very glad I read this book. And I put it in the 4th spot simply because there were other books in January that I just liked more. So coming in at 3 is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I was not expecting this. In this book, you follow Ender, who is a boy genius, and I'm not a big fan of child genius tropes. I think they're very hard to pull off, especially in movies. And I thought that the movie for this book was not good. But the book itself, man, in a literary sense, I thought Orson Scott Card did an amazing job. But I was nervous about the book because it does center on the idea of military action, primarily against some aliens that have attacked Earth. As I said in the individual video for that book, I am anti-war. I really feel like Orson Scott Card did a great job of being critical every step of the way, and you don't leave that book thinking that war is great. So I was surprisingly satisfied with that book. I thought it was very good. Coming in at number 2 is The Cancer Journals by Audre Lorde. Powerful and intimate. This is a memoir by Audre Lorde where she reveals her journey of having a mastectomy and the pressures that she felt even from the medical community to try to hide her mastectomy using prosthesis. So in the book, she does share journal entries from before the mastectomy to well after the mastectomy, leading up to the book being published. And by reflecting on her own lived experiences, she makes some amazing points regarding the treatment of women in society and really the treatment of being different and the idea that she should feel shame because her chest doesn't look like every other woman's chest. It's absolutely insane. So I was really glad to read this book. I thought it was a great read. And then my number one spot for all of the month of January goes to Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler. This is the sequel to Parable of the Sower. I loved Parable of the Sower, but this book, Parable of the Talents, I feel it takes everything from the first book and it really evolves it. And it is such an amazing story. It also is one that talks about oppression by the state. This month was challenging, okay? Both in real life and in the books that my wheel decided to spin for me. It really talks about being targeted for oppression because you are different. In Parable of the Talents, you have a community that is based off of a spirituality that was created in the first book. They're living their life in a rural location, doing their best to survive in a very chaotic world. And simply because they are not practicing the religion that is recognized by the state, they are oppressed. And in very disturbing ways. I think Octavia E. Butler does a really good job of mentioning the bad, looking at the bad, being in it long enough for you to get a feeling of what it is to experience this, but then also provides so much more depth with regards to hope, with regards to knowing that everything changes, and therefore even the moments that are the worst that we go through are not permanent. It is because of this book that I have been saying to my family, to my friends, to all of the community members that I know that have been affected by what's going on, which is everybody. It is because of this book that I have been saying to them that we will see the other side of this. It won't be easy. We will have to do a lot of work. We will have to raise our voices and experience a lot of pain and discomfort. But we will see the other side. And this book is really what gave me that faith. And I think it's important to hold on to. It's very easy to fall into defeatism. We just need to stay strong and keep pushing. Wasn't intending for my wrap up to be so politically charged, but so many of the books that I read this month were political commentaries. And I think this is the exact time to be reading books like this. All right, so those are the books that I read in January. That is my ranking. And now moving on to ACORN Bingo. If you want to know the rules for that, I will put the link to that video in the description. I'm just going to use this part of the video to reflect on whether or not I got a bingo. And I will say that every single book I finished, I could have gotten an ACORN Bingo, which means that I could have put the book in one spot in every column. And there is one book that gave me a golden acorn, and that is Parable of the Talents. It filled in every single prompt for the first row. So I'm going to be locking that in place. Cha-ching, clonk, I don't know, whatever the sound of locking is. The first row is now gone, and Parable of the Talents is now not only my favorite book of the month, but giving me a golden acorn. My goal for the year is to have every single row filled in with a golden acorn bingo. And the other thing that I thought that was interesting was every single book that I read, even the ones I DNF'd, could have fulfilled the learn a new word prompt. So that one to me is the easiest to fill. And then another thing I thought was interesting was that not a single book I read could have fulfilled the feel good prompt. Every single book I read was something disturbing. This tells me I need to read more feel-good books. At least balance it out, right? I tend to be drawn to books that are more dark, a little more serious. I love existential thinking. I've been an existential thinker my whole life. I need to remind myself that I also should be reading things that bring peace to my already hyperactive nervous system. But anyways, so that's that. That's my wrap up. I hope that you enjoyed this video. My first book of February is going to be I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And so that'll be my next video that comes out. Again, we're talking about oppression, but there also appears to be some hope in this book as well, which I'm really looking forward to. And I hope to see you along for the ride. If you did find any entertainment or value in this video, please consider leaving a like. Please consider subscribing if you want some more Book Squirrel in your life. And until next time, I hope you're having a wonderful whatever. And I'll talk to y'all later. Book Squirrel out. Bye. Book Squirrel. I don't know.